Good evening and welcome to the KNP Complex Community Meeting. My name is Carrie Templin and I will be your moderator for this evening's meeting. This meeting is being held on Tuesday, October 5th. I say that because it is being recorded, and as soon as, if for any reason we have any technical difficulties, we will make sure it's recorded and posted for everybody's benefit later. With that, I will start into introductions and begin with, let me step back and say that we will have a series of presenters as we have at the last couple of meetings, and we'll offer an opportunity at the end to ask questions. So if you hear of things you want to ask as the things are being presented, please drop them into the comments and we will see how much time we have and address as many of them as we possibly can. With that, I would like to introduce Clay Jordan, who is Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks Park Superintendent.
Thank you once again. If you've been joining us for any of our public meetings, we appreciate you returning. And if you're joining us for the first time, we appreciate you joining us tonight. We're excited to try to offer the best available information about the situation. And I think maybe a good place to begin is kind of at the high elevation level. You know, yesterday we had a pretty rough day on this fire. The meteorologists, the fire behavior specialists had anticipated that we could expect some pretty extreme fire behavior, and we got just that. We had 14,000 acres of growth, especially up in this section, the Redwood Mountain section, pushing up towards the north there. But the positive thing is that at the same time, they were also forecasting that if we get through yesterday, today would be better. Higher humidity levels, could expect some active fire, but not extreme fire. And that tomorrow we can expect probably even better conditions, and on so forth. And now we're looking at the possibility of rain Thursday night, Friday. So you're going to hear some details about that, and then even the possibility of more precipitation coming next Tuesday. So this is pretty favorable. And by the way, today, just as they predicted, we only had 2,000 acres of growth compared to yesterday's 14. So things are looking fairly optimistic right now. However, we know how tenacious fire can be out in California and drought and all that, and we're not resting our laurels counting on the weather to turn this situation around for us. We recognize that we still have a very complex incident. We have a huge geographic area from one end to the other end, and we have communities at risk down at the southern end of the fire, and then up in the northern end we have a whole nother set of communities. We're now on the national forest. We have the logistical challenge of supporting such a large geographic area is tricky, and so many personnel. So what we decided, and under an abundance of caution, and to ensure that this fire has the best possible support it can get, we've decided that we are going to zone this fire into 2 different management units, and we're bringing in a second high complexity team. The highest complexity teams are type 1 teams, just like the teams that we've had here since for the last 3 weeks or so. And so we're bringing in another high complexity team. So tomorrow we'll be transitioning with the California Team 2. It's a federal team that has a lot of experience fighting fire in California. And so they will then transition over the next couple of days and manage the northern part of the fire. They're going to be based out of Squaw Valley, so they'll be closer to the communities of concern up there. And then our current Southwest team will continue to manage the southern half of the fire until they time out and transition to another team that will transition in on Friday. And that is California Team 4. and they're moving, the operation will be shifting over to Wood Lake. So we'll have one Type 1 incident management team managing the northern half out of Squaw Valley, and then the southern half of the fire will be managed out of Wood Lake. It will all be closely coordinated together, and with all the partners continuing to work closely with us. So that's National Park Service, that's National Forest Service, that is CAL FIRE, that's Tulare County Fire, it's the Sheriff's Department, and to the extent necessary, the Fresno units are standing by and ready to support whatever is necessary on this. So I think we're really well positioned, great partnerships, and so things are looking up, but we are not taking any chances with this. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Our second presenter this evening is Teresa Benson. She is the Sequoia National Forest Supervisor.
Good evening, Teresa Benson, Forest Supervisor for the Sequoia National Forest. Thanks for joining us for this evening's update. And I just want to also reiterate the Forest Service's support for what Clay just let you know about with having a north zone and a south zone. And so we'll be welcoming the California Incident Management Team 2 to the north zone, and they'll be operating out of Squaw Valley. And the Forest Service will be very highly engaged and involved with that zone, of course, because the fire, as you know, is within the Sequoia National Forest, and we have been very engaged and are going to continue to be. And we'll be continuing to work with the Park Service and CAL FIRE and Tulare County, the Sheriff's Office, and looking forward to, like Clay mentioned, some good days ahead and working to contain the fire. And, you know, we have a great appreciation for the Southwest team, too, that's been here with us, working so hard to do a great job with this fire, given the circumstances that we have. We've got really rough terrain. We've got a lot of mortality that we're working with, a lot of standing dead trees, and just posing a lot of challenges. But they're doing a great job at keeping our firefighters safe and really working hard to get the work done around our communities, our sequoia groves, and working to minimize what the damage would be. And so I just want to thank them for that, because it's been a very challenging fire, as you all know. And I think lastly, I just want to thank all of you for your continued engagement and being there to ask us questions and let us know what your needs are. And we're going to be continuing to work with all of you to make sure that your questions are answered as we move into these zones. And so just know that we're all here working as one team. Our ultimate goal is to get the fire out as soon as we can. And so thanks for your support and for the support you've been given to our firefighters.
Thank you for that introduction. Appreciate it very much. With that, we will go over to an overview of what's going on the fire, and we will ask our Operations Section Chief, Chad Rice, to talk to us.
Good evening. My name is Chad Rice with your operational update for the KNP fire. Today, we had cleaner air than we had the past few shifts. Still really smoky and inversion throughout most of the fire until mid-morning, and then we were able to get some aviation resources working today, both on the north end and on the south end. We were limited with some aviation resources just due to some limitations. Aircraft have their maintenance schedules as well, and it just so happened that there were some issues with availability with some aircraft today. But we were able to get some aircraft over the fire and have some recon flights to assess the situation throughout this whole west side that I'm going to focus on tonight's update. The west side is going of the fire that's impacting most of the communities. The whole east side of the fire is going into the park. not many private in holdings on the whole eastern side of the fire. So I'll start down here on the southernmost on the Mineral King Road. Down here on the Mineral King Road is all the locals who have driven that. That is a very rough piece of ground to fight fire in. The slope and the fuels are proving difficult, just the road access right there. So with fire crossing onto the south of Mineral King Road creates a few hurdles there. Today we had some rollout off the cut bank and a pretty good sized boulder about the size of a car, just cut off traffic for a while, a couple hours before that was removed. So those are just some of the hurdles that we're running into on the Mineral King side. Fire is south of there. It has not crossed the Middle Fork River yet, but there is places where we do anticipate it to cross over the next few shifts. This piece of ground is really tough. We've had crews go in there and look at picking up an edge. It's really steep. When I say picking up an edge, creating that fire line to contain the fire. And multiple crews have really looked at it, tried to get in there, and just haven't found the opportunity based on the terrain, the fuels, the fire behavior. We're still trying to find our options or in our foothold on the south end. It's a really challenging piece of ground, given all the factors given between access to one-lane road, the terrain, and the fuels. Moving north here, this edge right here is we feel that edge is going to be contained in the next few days, based on the fuels it's burning into and the crews that we have in there, and the success we're able to get all the hose lays in there to control this piece of ground coming up the ridge line and coming down into Three Rivers. Coming north from Three Rivers and the park headquarters, there's still an open edge right here that comes from Shepherd's Saddle. There's a lot of heat up here that's backing its way down through that rough terrain, and as the crews are able to use this road system to keep the fire to the east of that road system to protect the community of Three Rivers. Moving north, a pretty quiet edge from here, going all the way up to Esham Point. Esham Point is where the fire, just near the communication towers in there. Today we had very favorable conditions to finish our burnout all the way north up towards the old Sawmill Road, and very favorable conditions for the smoke to blow in to the burned area and not across our line. We still have an open edge from the General's Highway south on our dozer line towards that's Redwood Mountain Road. This is our primary line. Based on the weather that we have coming, we're very confident over the next couple days from the General's Highway south towards Esham Point. All that will be tied in and secured, and the crews will start mopping up and keeping the Heartland community protected. Now, moving north from the General's Highway towards the Park Ridge Tower. That's our focus today on the north end. The ridge line coming off the Park Ridge Tower that ties back into the General's Highway. That's where we have a lot of crews working. There's an old fire line in there that they're able to reopen, and there is fire just below that tower. And they're using that old fire line and a burn operation to keep fire south of the tower and south of the community of Wilsonia. And then moving east along there, the crews were able to go direct with hand line and with dozer line, and there's some road systems in there that they're going to have tied in, we anticipate, in the next few shifts. There is some previous fuels treatments in there, and the terrain is a lot more gentle compared to some of this country that's in Redwood Canyon. Inside Wilsonia and Grant Grove, we have a lot of operations, a lot of structure protection groups in there working. There's a trail system and a road system around the community of Wilsonia that the crew's been prepping. There's a hose lay all the way around it as an alternate line just in case this line around Park Ridge Tower doesn't work. And around Grant Grove, there's a lot of work going into the Grant tree. There's sprinkler systems in the area. There's structure wrap. There's a lot of personnel working in the Wilsonia and the Grant Grove piece of ground. Coming south along Generals Highway, all this line is holding. There's still some work to do to tie in some lines here around the campgrounds near Big Baldy. And then coming along Generals Highway, we do have another slop over, but another spot fire, it's called, across Generals Highway in the Stony Creek area. And there is a planned prescribed fire unit with pre-identified lines in there that's making that spot fire more easy to catch for the crews on the ground. Pretty quiet all around this west side. As far as quiet, because the smoke has been laying over and it's been shaded out by the sun, so we haven't seen the growth that we have seen going up north. That concludes your operational update.
Thank you for that. So with that, we will introduce Stuart Turner. He's the fire behavior analyst, and he'll talk a little bit more about weather and how that's going to affect fire behavior.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Stuart Turner. I'm the fire behavior analyst for the team. As the fire behavior analyst, what I do for the team is I predict what the fire is going to do, where it's going to go, and how big it's going to get there. And I look at three things in the fire. First thing I look at is the topography. I look at those hills, the mountains, the canyons, the streams. All of that affects the fire behavior, how fast it's going to move. Then I look at the weather, and I have a full-time meteorologist on staff from the Weather Service that feeds us information on the weather, and he's predicting the weather just for this fire area. Not for over east of us or over west of us, but just for our fire area. And in fact, I can ask him, what's the weather going to be on this ridge tomorrow at noon, and he will give me a forecast just for that ridge for tomorrow at noon. So it's a very specific forecast dialed right into what we need. And let me go over the weather that he gave us for tomorrow and the extended that you heard from Clay, a little hint of what's to come. So he's telling me tomorrow the temperature is going to be low of 70, a high of 74. The humidity is going to get down to 34 to 41%. The winds are going to be light and variable, mostly terrain driven, so they're going to move upslope through the day, and that's going to be 2 to 5 miles an hour up on the ridges. We will see west-southwest 3 to 6 miles per hour with gusts up to 8 miles an hour after noon. So that's the kind of weather he's feeding me, and that's important because that humidity is a big driver of the fuel moisture out there. And the fuel moisture is in those fine dead fuels, anything less than 1/4 of an inch. So the pine needles, the twigs, that's the primary driver of any big forest fire. I don't care how big it is. It can be a million acres. The thing that drives that fire are those fine dead fuels. That's the important fuel moisture I'm looking at out there. So I take that humidity, I look at the fuels out there. So tomorrow we're looking at a 9% fuel moisture in those fine dead fuels. So that's not very dry. I mean, it's dry enough to burn, but it's not as volatile as we've seen the last 4 days. The other fuel moisture I'm concerned with is the 1,000-hour fuels, and that's kind of a technical term, but what that translates to is the size of about a 2x4. So that big branch, that small log, that fuel moisture out there is sitting at 6%. And that doesn't drive the fire, but it holds the fire overnight or holds it through a wet period. So that's very important to know how long this fire may last. And so those fuels are extremely dry out there. So I use those in my calculations for the fire behavior. So the fuels, the live, the dead, all drive the fire behavior. You heard from Clay, we've had some tough days behind us. Yesterday was a really tough day. He gave you a preview what we did see yesterday, and I want to make sure that you understand what happened. So as we look at this area that burned out, the several thousand-acre run in there, we had some fire in here in the canyon. The sun came up yesterday. We had clear air, so we started getting direct sunlight on this slope on the west side of the canyon that faces east. So that morning sun came up, got on that, preheated those fuels, helped them dry out because it was a very dry night the 2 nights ago. Dried them out further. The intensity started to build in those fine dead fuels. Once that triggered, it started a self-propagating mechanism. So that fire developed a big column, started feeding air into that column, and that started that rolling to the north that created that big run up there. So that was yesterday. That weather's gone. We're not going to see that today. We didn't see it today. We're not going to see it tomorrow. So the humidities come up, the fuel moistures come up. So that type of fire behavior we're not going to see. So tomorrow what we're going to see is low to moderate fire behavior around most of the fire. We may see some active fire behavior as the slope and the fuels start to line up and start to move around a little bit. So let's take a look at the fire, and I'll tell you where I think it's going to go tomorrow. And I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of movement, so just keep that in mind as we go around the fire. Let's start down here in Charlie on the south end of the fire where operations started. So this is all backing down to the east fork of the river, as we talked about earlier from operations. That's just going to continue. Backed very little today. It's going to back even less tomorrow, but it is going to back down towards the river. We're starting to see that bump into the river. The river is a holding mechanism, but it's not going to contain it down there. Eventually, it will find a way across, a log, maybe a tree that's laying across it, or even just a spot across the river, and then it will get on the other slope and start to run up that slope. But for now, that's going to hold in place. I don't think we'll see it cross the river tomorrow at all. As we come over into the Division Alpha, there's not much going on in there. I think we'll see just minor movement in there, not a big concern. As we get up into the Ash Peak area, you heard that was moving around in there. That's going to continue, and that is backing down slope. Backing is a slow movement of the fire. Tomorrow we'll have some upslope winds as that gets heated up from the sunshine. So that's going to be pushing the fire back up, and the fire is going to be trying to push itself down. So it's going to be battling back and forth, slow progress. I don't anticipate a whole lot of movement in there tomorrow. Then as we come up into the Heartland area, you know, you heard operations talk about burning out. One of the things we do in fire is we remove the fuels ahead of the fire. Once those fuels are removed, there's nothing there to burn. And we use a lot of different methods, bulldozers and physically going in there digging line. You know, we might go in there and dig a line that's only 6 inches wide. You know, that's not going to hold any of this fire. These are big flames. But if we take that little piece of line, light it, and we start off with a small flame and that backs away from the line, it starts to burn up those fuels, blacken them, and takes them away from the ability for the fire to burn it again. So that little 6-inch wide line, as it backs away, turns into 100 feet, 200 feet, a half a mile, depending on how much fuel we have between the line and the main fire. So we build a very wide fire line that way, and that's why we burn out. So that burnout will back into the main fire, taking out those fuels. The only critical part of that is if it spots across the line. So tomorrow we should have very favorable winds in there that will keep everything pushed back into the fire area and not see any spotting. Don't anticipate any movement there. As we get further up into the upper reaches here of the Red Mountain Grove area, I do anticipate some more backing down towards our fire line in that area, but very little movement once again tomorrow. As we get up to the top, up around the NPS Tower area, that's where some of our movements will occur tomorrow. It's going to back a little bit to the south and to the west a little bit, and then very little movement to the north. I'm not anticipating much at all. It's moved up to the top of ridge. It's kind of hung up there today. Really didn't move today at all, and with less fire weather tomorrow, I don't think we'll see that move very much at all. As we come around Quail Flats and on down to the south, here again, very little movement in there, a little bit of backing down the slopes, but not a big aggressive run in there. And then as we get down to the Stony Creek Lodge area, that slop over that we had in there, once again, that's trying to back down the slope, and there is a little bit of upslope in there that it wants to try to work on. But with the weather, the moist fuels, I don't think we're going to see that move around at all. As we come around to the upper reaches of what we're calling Division Papa and Division Lima, there's some high country in there. The fuels are getting kind of scabby. We're seeing minimal movement in there. Once again, minimal movement tomorrow. And then as we get down to Morrow Rock, got some fire on some steep slopes in there. If any of you have been up to Mora Rock, you know how steep those slopes are up there. In steep slopes with active fuel, active fire in those fuels could spell a little bit more active fire behavior. So around the fire tomorrow, I think this may be an area we see the most active fire behavior as it tries to make some runs up some of those slopes. Then to follow that on around to the Castle Creek Grove area, that is backing down towards the Middle Fork. It's a very steep slope, shaded very well in the afternoon, the heat of the day, so it's not getting all that solar radiation that preheats the fuel. So that's going really slow, but methodically backing down. I think we'll see very little movement in there tomorrow. And that brings us back down into the bottom, down into the East Fork River. We'll see a little bit movement on the eastern edge of this, off the road, up to the northeast through the Grove, and that's just from an upslope run in there. So that's what I think we're going to see in the fire behavior tomorrow. And I'll be hanging around for questions. Thank you.
Okay, because I had so much trouble with Tulare County, then I'm going to probably crucify the name of our air resource advisor that is going to do a presentation for us, and I apologize in advance. I believe it's somewhere close to Ariane Sarzadi, and she will do a presentation virtually for us and give us some stuff about smoke.
All right, thank you very much. It is Ariane Sarzodi, but I do go by Ari, which is kind of perfect for my job right now. I'm going to share my screen here. I am the Air Resource Advisor assigned to this fire. I am also an employee for Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park. I am their smoke tech. So this is all very home to me. So as you can see right now, this is what we produce every day. It's our smoke outlook. This can be found on your trap lines, or there's also there's also one that's available on the internet. I just really want to go real fast over what we see here. So basically, this is our forecast area for the fire. This includes Bishop, Lone Pine, Fresno, Visalia, Three Rivers, Pinehurst, and Hume. And so that's our forecast area. Right here, we'll have a special statement just basically saying that the San Joaquin has issued an air quality alert, and that's through Sunday. This is where you can find some fire information. And then this is kind of a synopsis of the smoke that we're going to be seeing today, maybe tomorrow, and then what we saw yesterday. And then also maybe just a little blurb on health and safety. Down below here is a more in depth of the forecast area. Right here on Monday, this is what we saw yesterday as far as the 24-hour AQI for that day. And then what we do for each day is kind of give you an idea of when, if there is a bit of a clearing for the day, what's the potential for better air quality, if there is improvement. So this is where we can you can go through, and if you wanted, I wanted to go out for a walk, then you can maybe see, like, this is forecasted, of course, like what we're seeing might be a better time of day. I do want to go next to show you that this is also interactive. And where you can find this is on the Wildland Fire and Smoke map. And what's nice about this is you can click on these inner hyperlinks, and this will bring you to the InsaWeb. There's also another ARA that's assigned to the Windy Fire below us. And this also can get you to what her outlook says. So anything, any smoke impacts south of Visalia that we're seeing from the Windy Fire will be included on hers. And then what is also nice about the interactive one is it updates hourly the concentrations for each of the forecast areas. So if we see here in Visalia, you'll see that it's oh, I think it just changed. So so that's what's nice, is you can get an up-to-date, what's going on in the area. Another quick thing I want to share with you is the California Smoke blog, which is, if this lets me grab it real fast. This is a one-stop shop that with all the resources you could ever need for any different smoke outlook. It's posted on this California Smoke information. You can get current air quality links, air quality advisories, health and smoke. And so just any advice on, on when it's smoky, what to do and things like that. I think it even includes, how how smoke can affect you, and then how to reduce your exposure, and links like that for helpful hints like the way it's been that we've been seeing in the last few days. And last but not least, I just kind of want to give an update on what we're seeing for tomorrow. We'll probably see this is current conditions now. We'll probably be seeing a little bit more of that smoke in the mornings around the forecast area, but as we are getting that better wind come through, we should probably see some clearing in the afternoon. And with the weather coming through, we'll probably be seeing some better days to come. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I just wanted to say thank you, and I'll be around for questions after. Thanks.
Thank you, Ari. Appreciate that. Next, we'll ask Dirk Charlie, who's the tribal liaison, to come up and speak to us.
Good evening, everybody. I'm honored to have an opportunity to share information on the tribes that are affected by this incident. And being a local guy from the Dunlap-Bannamono, it's great to come up here and share some information that I've learned and what I've been trying to do here on the KNP complex. As a liaison, I served the incident commander and the agency administrators in identifying information that are issues and concerns with the tribal communities. I mean, this land here is near and dear to them, and 6 tribes that I'm working with in an organization, they've expressed their deep appreciation for staying informed and, again, having that type of leadership and support and helping manage the fire, but also to listen to their concerns about any impacts that might occur out there in the cultural resources of this great land. Of the 6 tribes, we're working with the Tule River Indian Reservation, which is south of the incident, Santa Rosa Rancheria Tachiyokuts, which is west of the incident, and Table Mountain Rancheria. They're just northwest, but they have that Kings River Canyon, and they've worked with us on the Grant Grove area. We've also have the Waxahchie Michai tribe of Esham Valley, which is located right over here, along with the Wachumni people, the Wachumni tribe, located out of the Kuya and out of this area. And then also Dunlap-Bannamono Indians, my traditional homelands here. Again, hearing the issues and concerns of the people and relaying it to the incident management. I want to thank the operations and the suppression leadership for at least working in a very good manner with the resource advisors. The resource advisors, they're out there, there are eyes and ears on the ground when looking for natural resource and cultural resources, and I've been able to engage with them and identify areas of importance to the tribes ahead of time, and they're good line scouts for us, working together in a safe and a cooperative manner with operations and with incident management team leadership. I want to thank the federal, state and local governments, for all their smooth working relationships, with CAL FIRE, Tulare County, Fresno County, Park, Bureau of Land Management. All these organizations, I've been able to relay and explain and share the contacts with the tribal leaders. These tribal government leaders are responsible for the safety and welfare of their citizens, but their number one concern is the safety and welfare of the firefighters. And I can share that in a good way because I used to do the same thing that they're doing out there. So let's pray for their safety and welfare. And again, you got the leaders of these sovereign nations and the tribes and the groups. We're supporting them in a good way and always with good thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
That with us. So we're getting close to the end of our presentations, and we will take questions here shortly. At this point, I would like to invite Charlie Norman to come up. He is the Tulare County Fire Chief. Finally got it right.
Can everybody hear me? Good evening, everyone. In comparison, I'll be very brief tonight. Thank you so much. I have Supervisor Larry McCarry here from District 1, who's part of a very supportive board and CAO that supports all our public safety missions in Tulare County. In addition to this, we have the Windy Fire in the South County that's at about just under 100,000 acres that we're getting some rapid containment on. It's about 72% contained, in addition to the 15,000 calls per service per year we're running. Obviously, our first priority is everybody's safety. Thank you for adhering to the evacuation orders and warnings and letting us concentrate on everything that we're trying to do. Today, from a Tulare County standpoint, we had a couple of assignments just over the last operational period. Most of our folks spent the majority of the time today doing structure defense and mopping up in the Heartland Structure Group on the northwest portion of the incident. Also, have done a lot of work in the Oak Grove Bridge area on Middle King Road. They've done some great structure defense down in that operation, and just working with the team to try and get some things done as we get some greater containment on this incident. Also, other Tulare County services as we go through this, we do have an emergency operations center that is open at the Fire Sheriff Admin Building. So look at our Facebook page, make sure you have all the contact information. If there's anything we can do for you as you go through these evacuation processes, we're there for you. So that's all I have to add this evening. I'll answer any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Presenter before we start taking questions is Lieutenant Steve Sanchez, and he is with the Tulare County Sheriff's Office.
Good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Steve Sanchez. I'm the headquarters commander for the Sheriff's Department in Visalia. I just wanted to take some time to go over some of the evacuation orders, evacuation warnings, or road closures that the Sheriff's Department's involved in. The orders and warnings that we've already given on the south end of the KNP are Mineral King Road, including Mineral King, Silver City, Cabin Grove, Oak Grove, Hammond, Gateway, and Sycamore. The evacuation warnings we have given is the community of Three Rivers. And the road closure on the south end is Mineral King Road on Highway 198 to the park entrance, and that's being manned by the California Highway Patrol. On the north end of the KNP, we've given evacuation orders to the communities of Badger, Esham Valley, Big Meadows, Weston Meadows, and Wilsonia. We've given evacuation warnings for the community of Badger, and the Sheriff's Department is in charge of the road closures at Esham Valley Drive and Stagecoach, and Esham Valley Drive at Whitaker Forest. We do have multiple sheriff deputies up in the area patrolling as well as maintaining roadblocks. And as Chief Norman mentioned earlier, the public safety and security is a top priority for the Sheriff's Department. So we just want everyone to be safe. And when we give the evacuation orders, it's because it's unsafe to be in the area.
And we will have closing remarks by Incident Commander Dave Bales.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Bales, Incident Commander with Southwest Team 2. You know, a lot of good comments tonight, and I really want to thank all of our partners, and you've heard that throughout the meeting tonight, you know, with the Sequoia Kings National Park, the U.S. Forest Service, Tulare County Fire and Sheriffs, Cal Fire, and Fresno County Fire and Sheriff, as well as the utility companies and, you know, power and electric, you know, telephone communications, AT&T. You know, we think about all that, and we think about a team, and it's been a team. We've all been working together for the communities, for the parks, for the forest to really contain this fire as soon as possible. And as you know, this fire has really been challenging to us. Here in the park, you're talking some of the steep, rugged terrain. That's why it's a national park, right? It's extremely steep, extremely rugged, and putting firefighters in there is a very difficult thing. And so it's really where can you put them to be at the highest likelihood for success, and taking that time. You heard Chad talk, our operations chief, talk about Mineral King Road and just rollouts, rocks the size of boulders. You heard the forest supervisor talk about the mortality of tree density in the area, and those are all safety considerations we have to take in effect as we put a plan together and insert firefighters, and that's a very difficult thing. You know, a lot of crews, put a lot of people in that country. We have had fatalities in this part of the country from trees and rocks, and just again, you start talking about the sheer numbers of folks you start putting into a compressed area and driving and that as you work with the public and a large engine or crew buggy is a little bigger than your average car. So those are the considerations we take as an incident management team as we move forward through our values at risk and the mission we're doing. And ultimately that mission is protect firefighters and public safety. And that's what we're really working on as we continue to protect the communities. And just here as we close tonight and go on to questions, I just again like to thank our agencies and our agency administrators, our cooperating partners that have been helping us move forward on this. And again, it's been a giant team effort. Yesterday was a pretty big day for the fire as it made a big push up Redwood Creek, drainage. And as you all know, it's that drainage and alignment, fuels, topography, and it made a big push. As it came up on top, it got into, you heard Stuart talk a lot about that, of how it come up on top into a better fuels area where we're able to get our firefighters in there safely and work towards that, picking up the direct fire edge and a little safer for our firefighters. So I appreciate the community's support, appreciate the sheriff's support as we let the communities know where the orders are, and thank you as you have given the firefighters the space to do their job. So with that, I'll close and we'll get on to questions. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, that does conclude the formal presentations for this evening. I do know that people have probably been submitting comments and questions, so I will ask Sharma to read them, and then we will see if we can find the right person to address it.
Okay, let's start with our Heartland evacuation orders still in effect?
That is Tulare County, so Lieutenant will come up and help us with that.
Yes, they still are in order. I apologize. I wrote down the community of Badger with evacuation orders. It should be Heartland. Heartland is under evacuation orders, and the community of Badger is on evacuation warnings.
Next question.
So I believe these will be for the Park Service. If the park has such good wildfire prevention management and controlled burns as they are claiming, why is there so much underbrush and why is the fire so huge?
That's an excellent question. And first of all, to put it in context, we're a big believer when the conditions are right, and this summer they were never right, but when the conditions are right, prescribed fire is more prescribed fire on the landscape, eliminates those heavy accumulation of fuels that when combined with drought creates these really large fires that are so devastating. And so at Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park, we're very proud of the fact that we started prescribed fire back in the 1950s even and been doing it a long time. However, the reality is that conducting prescribed fire takes a lot of resources. You have to wait for the conditions are right, and sometimes you can go an entire year or 2 years and the conditions aren't right with drought, just like this year. And so there is a limited amount of acreage that we have the resources for in order to conduct those operations. So what we've done over the years is to prioritize the limited resources that we have. And so we've focused around some of our developed areas, the communities around Wilsonia, around Mineral King, around some of the groves, Giant Forest, obviously, Grant Grove. And so in those areas where we've been able to treat, we have seen this fire and previous fires knock down and drop way down in intensity as soon as they hit those treated areas, which has been great for protection of our resources. The giant sequoia grows, great for the protection of our communities. The problem is, as a percentage, the two parks alone is 865,000 acres. Of that, a relatively small percentage has been treated by prescribed fire. And so we're enjoying those benefits from where we have been able to treat, but we have vast areas of the fire area that have never been treated, and that same is going to be true and across the landscape and national forests and that sort of things. So we're very committed to it. It's very important for the safety of our communities and for the protection of our forests. But the reality is that we have very limited opportunities to do it. Thank you.
I actually have two more questions
Great.
that I believe pertain to you. The next is, when might the park reopen?
Oh, when might the park reopen? I'll tell you, it's I think about this. I kind of dream about it. Of course, we're still in the throes of this fire, and most waking moments of the day and evening is dedicated to trying to contain this fire and eliminate that threat. So the reality is we have not been able to get in there to do the damage assessments. But I need to be realistic. As soon as it's safe to do so, we can get into the areas, do those damage assessments. We can start putting plans together for repairs, rehabilitation. But I will point out a couple of things that I'm worried about. Number one is along our many of our developed areas, the road systems, we have thousands of now standing dead trees along the roads, along in our campgrounds, picnic areas, some of the front country areas. We're going to have to address those. And especially in the winter time, there is limited amount of trees that we can cut in the winter time. The other real concern that I have is some of those real steep slopes along the General's highways between Ash Mountain and Lodgepole and between Grant Grove and Lodgepole have been burned real hard. And I'm afraid that once we get the precipitation, and we all know we really want a lot of precipitation this winter, snow and rain and all that. The more precipitation we get, though, the more I'm concerned about landslides that could cut off access to large areas of the park. So I do think it's going to be a opening section by section. It's really hard to predict what that timetable is, but it'll be as soon as we can.
Thank you for that. And the final question, I believe, for you at the moment would be, what is, can we get an update on the infamous Milk Tower Lookout?
Yeah, so the Milk Tower Lookout is down at Ash Mountain, and it is an old fire tower, metal fire tower, that stands above the greater Ash Mountain area. It has been a key communications tower. We have communications equipment that helps us communicate across the park. The fire burned through there pretty hot, but we finally were able to get in there and inspect that this week. And what we found is that the tower is still intact. So the metal structure held up real well. The basic structure of the tower is in good shape. Just about all of our equipment, though, was lost. So that's a significant operational impact to the park, but fortunately the tower itself is intact.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I believe our next question will be for operations, but I can read that and we can determine that. This is mostly going to be in the Wilsonia area. I know that it was mentioned that several crews, so I think they want a little bit more specific on, let me just read this one. If the fire reaches the Y or west on 180, how will firefighters access Wilsonia and Grant? And then what contingencies are in place for a fire line or a fire that wraps around to the west and approaches Wilsonia and Grant Grove from the Y or at Big Stump?
Yeah, I'll talk on Wilsonia a little bit more. So specifically, the concern is if the fire continues to the west and continues to threaten Wilsonia and the Grant Grove. coming around this General's Highway, it's a rough piece of ground, very steep, and the fuel loading that Stu talked about in there, that's what we're fighting right now. So the fuel loading below this road is high. So the good thing is that road system and that cut bank gives us multiple opportunities as we shrink this. We have a pretty high confidence. We have a very high confidence that it won't make it to the big stump. I'm not saying it won't, but we have a high confidence that it won't. You never know what'll happen with the weather systems here. But there are options as far as road systems. Like I said, this ground is more friendly than it is coming up this face of Redwood Canyon. So with the heavy equipment in there and the crews, we have multiple layers of options in between the fire and Wilsonia. As far as the access, we do have some equipment on the line. If fire is on both sides, there is opportunities where, if the fire pulses, the crews will back out, let it pulse, and then re-engage re-engage the fire. But the potential is if a tree comes across the road, that'll delay access before we can cut the tree out. So I think that answers that question. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is going to be, can we get to our cabin in Wilsonia to get out our things, or is it closed to us? I believe that's going to be a sheriff's department.
Yes, I believe the sheriff's department is going to address that for us.
So the Wilsonia area is closed. You cannot access it. We do have an evacuation order for the Wilsonia area.
Carrie, I'm not seeing anything else coming in at the moment, so if we would like to wrap it up.
With that, I thank you all for your time this evening, and once again for attending the community meeting. I hope we were able to answer some of your questions, give you a better understanding of what's happening on the ground, what the firefighters are doing to help protect your national parks and your homes and properties. With that, thank you and good night.